Hi everyone, welcome back to the Weekly Politics Show. I'm Councillor Premier with co-host Councillor Andrew Rudd. So in this section, we're going to talk about how do we solve the problem of knife crime. And we're joined by a guest, Zak Hussain, who's a local youth worker, and is quite well known in social media. But hopefully today you'll be well behaved, Zak. Zak, over to you. Do you want to give us a bit of your background, Zak, into the youth work that you've done and where you've worked? And then I'll let Andrew come straight in with some questions. Zak, you're on mute.
Am I in there?
Yeah,
the
yes,
issues
we
of
can hear you.
technology.
Yeah.
Hi everyone. Thank you, Guru. My name's Zak Hussain. I'm a youth worker, and I have had the opportunity of sort of working in various boroughs in London, but also abroad as well. Had the pleasure of doing youth work in Switzerland, South Africa, the Czech Republic. I'm currently running my own consultancy, and I'm working with the government quite closely to support change from the lockdown and COVID, and how the youth sector has had to develop over the last year or so, including digital youth work. I myself am a product of youth work. My youth worker, Shabu, is still within the service here in Tower Hamlets, and I'm someone that has had experiences of growing up in Tower Hamlets, but the youth centre that I used to go to, Link Centre in probably by Bow, and also the Arbour Youth Centre, which I had the luxury of sort of managing once I'd sort of got myself into a formal career, was a testament to the willingness of the staff and also the commitment to young people in order for people like myself to achieve and succeed. I'm here today to talk about a topic which is quite close to my heart. I also have a relative who sadly passed away about 7 years ago through knife crime on the island. It was a big case. My cousin, he was fledgling to sort of be the young mayor at the time, but sadly lost his life in a dispute between two neighbours. And I'm here today to hopefully talk about what we can do as a community to support young people growing through this period of, living in 2021 post-COVID, and also what responsibility that the council and other authorities can put in place in regards to measures to support young people, to stop them from going down the wrong tracks, to support families with their children, but also to give young people a voice in what provisions are there for them in order to achieve outside of school as well. So that's a bit about me.
Cool. Before Andrew comes in, I just want to, as a conversation starter, before you came on this show, I remember this conversation we had where you said Tower Hamlets is 4 years behind other London boroughs in terms of knife crime. Do you want to just explain what you mean by that, and then I'll let Andrew come in with some questions.
I think for me, my most recent role was in Barking and Dagenham, and they've got a state-of-the-art youth provision there, which is part funded by the council, part funded by big companies and philanthropists, and also the young people as well. So the young people contribute towards a membership, and each time they attend, they pay a nominal fee of 50p. And the facilities are absolutely amazing. And I think with where we're at as a community here in Tower Hamlets, it's very difficult to hear anyone saying, "Oh, I'm going to the same youth centre my parents used to go to," or "I'm still doing this particular activity outside of school." Many historic youth provisions here in Tower Hamlets have actually, and unfortunately, been closed down through whatever reason of a lack of funding, or there's a change, or there's redevelopment, and that existing provision has then changed over to include other factors as opposed to being a youth-friendly space. There's a lot of work and there's a lot of research around knife crime and what works and what doesn't work, but also highlighting things like safeguarding. Young people who are at risk of being victims of knife crime, but also perpetrators carrying knives, are highlighted through other streams of work. So it could be bad behavior, it could be numbers of suspensions, it could be truancy. There's a lot of underlying issues around this particular issue, but there's things like contextual safeguarding which are being implemented up and down the country. So it's not just looking at the individual, but it's looking at locations. Young people might be at particular risk from a particular place. What can the local authority partners do, and also the authority do, to support changing that dynamic in that said place? So it could be a local park, it could be a street, it could be a shop that's selling alcohol to underage kids, but looking at the wider context and actually looking at the risk that a place also puts, as opposed to just that individual as well. And these are things that have to be sort of considered now, especially in this day and age where young people are quite fluid. The situation has changed from pre-lockdown to now, and obviously the birth of social media and the dangers to it, people need to be aware of it.
Cool. And Andrew, do you want to come in?
Yeah. So So I've been to the youth zone in Barking Dagenham, and I was hugely impressed. So I was wondering if it might be worth for other people if you could describe what youth zone in Barking Dagenham is like compared to, let's say, your average Tower Hamlets council youth centre, and kind of what the differences are.
I think for me, like, I left my position there at the back end of March to work on a couple of new projects, but the youth centre in Tower Hamlets is something which people could probably reminisce that I used to go to as a kid. It was a rundown old building. You know, if you look at the centres that we have, some are state of the art, but if you look at what resources are available, you know, you might have a dodgy bat, or, you know, the table tennis might be a bit wonky, a pool table with the felt ripped. But the youth zone in Barking Dagenham is part of a network of national youth zones which accommodate 50,000 kids a week. So from Carlisle all the way down to Croydon, these super hubs are coming up, and unfortunately Tower Hamlets Council rejected an opportunity for there to be one here in our community. There's a 4G football pitch, there's a rock climbing wall, it's open 7 days a week, especially when young people need a youth service, not just Monday to Friday, but actually on the weekends as well. You know, people from all backgrounds, of all ages, from 8 all the way up to 25 are there, and you can do activities, give something new a go, continue with it, and maybe hopefully achieve and progress through that particular activity. Or it could just be a safe space for young people to come and meet new people, knowing that there's youth workers there, knowing that there's a responsible adult, but also having someone to talk to. And I think that is the debate that needs to happen here in Tower Hamlets. If you ask young people who do they trust outside of school to be there for them through their sort of growing up, they wouldn't be able to mention many people outside of their immediate family and friends. And unfortunately, people in our community, even the adults, need support and help as well. So there needs to be an acknowledgement that there has to be provision which is for young people, created by young people. Yes, there is some good work happening in the third sector, but as a council, there's a whole raft of changes that I myself as a professional would love to see, and the right resources put in. It can't be a political football because of the fact that there's such a huge proportion of young people living in our borough. This is the next generation, this is the future. If we're not going to invest in them now, there isn't going to be any tangible successes moving forward. Yes, the borough has changed. There's a lot more people moving into the borough, but who are we accommodating with that? I know you're going to go into housing later on, but if you look at the demographic of people moving in, it is already ready-made people who are adults, but the families and the kids that need support and provision are being left out. And I think if you think about the differences and the disparity between our council budget, which is still one of the largest in London for youth provision and for young people, the outcomes are very little. So clearly something's gone wrong, something needs to be looked at, and unfortunately, unless an honest discussion is going to occur around it, we are going to still continue to see issues of knife crime, we're going to see youth on youth violence, and also young people astray because they haven't got somewhere to go, something to do, and no one to talk to.
Okay. So Councillor Puramir and I have been kind of working on some ideas about how we improve, and I think one of my sort of concerns is that, you know, for example, to do a youth zone, you know, that would be a 4-year project. So have you got any ideas about things that we could do like really quickly? Because one of our concerns is actually violence is going to get worse this summer. You know, what are the things that we could do in the short term, medium and long term to deal with some of these issues?
Short term, I think there needs to be collaboration between organisations that are working with young people. I know Rich Mix is a fond favourite of the Labour Party here in Tower Hamlets, and they get lots of money. If you were to ask them what their membership is for young people of those aged under the age of 19 or those additionally, will be near enough nil. There's amazing people out there in our community, from Niamore at Wapping Youth. You've got Janelle from Valence. You've also got Andy from ELT Baptist Church. You've got Manik from Newark. And obviously the Bangladesh Football Association do amazing work to keep young people occupied many times a week. It's important that they are supported and they've got a voice as well to actually shape where the funding goes. It's very unheard of that anyone actually achieves anything from these organisations, from mainstream grants that are distributed. I don't know how it works, but clearly there is a void of supporting these amazing charities. In the short term, statistically, when kids are out of school, ASB and crime goes up. It's a fact. Unfortunately, the last year or so, we've had kids out of school for prolonged periods and no one has been in check with them. I think what needs to happen, we've got half term next week. What are the activities on offer? Where can young people go? And what is the program? Is it going to entice anybody to get out their house, off their PlayStations, knowing that they're going to do something meaningful and productive? It's going to be a handful. I think collating what we do have and putting an amazing timetable together and actually getting people to be aware of it, from social workers to schools to members of the public, to be able to sort of signpost would be one thing in the short term that needs to happen.
Yeah.
In the medium term, you need to look at how you're actually funding youth provision, because I know there is another restructure that's happened now in the last 4 years, which isn't good. There's amazing youth workers within the council youth service who are probably feeling battered and beaten from post to pillar. They need to be empowered. But also there needs to be an acknowledgement that young people are young people today, not what we was 10, 15 years ago. I still seem to think that I'm a young person, but I'm actually 31 now. I'm not in touch with what young people need. The challenges that they're facing are very, very different. There needs to be a buy-in from big corporations who are invested in Tower Hamlets to actually invest in this group of young people, whether it be through apprenticeships, whether it be through employment opportunities. It seems like we're developing and the buildings are getting more and more shiny, but there isn't any tangible wealth or skills within our young people. The Kickstarter scheme, which was launched by the government, how many local companies who have got contracts with Tower Hamlets Council, how many of them are actually taken upon young people from our community to do the jobs? For example, Riney, they get all the contracts out on the roads. How many young people from our community are working so they can actually gain employment and gain independence and actually better their prospects? How many of our young people are going to Russell Group universities, and how many young people are now going to be able to confidently say they've got the skills at 17, 18, 19 to know what next steps are available to them? We need more people in the medium term to be able to support. And this is where I think volunteering plays a massive part. You're attracting so many skilled people who are wealthy, affluent, who have got a range of different experiences, but how do we put them in touch with the existing community here in Tower Hamlets? I've got a lot to give, so I volunteer. Puru, Andrew, I'm sure you both have got a lot to give. And I think there needs to be real meaningful volunteering opportunities, so then we can impart that knowledge and disseminate to the next generation that are coming in. Long term, we really need to look at who we are as a council and what our priorities lie. If we're not going to focus on young people, then let's just make it be clear and we're going to focus our attention. So there's no point having all these sort of sound bites that we're supporting young people, and actually there hasn't been any change at all. If we look at Canary Wharf, for example, everyone can see but how many young people can attain that. Very, very nominal. And especially when we think about the longer term sort of prospects of this borough, yes, the government, there's austerity cuts. There's actually a choice that we can make. This council made the decision to close down nurseries supporting young people with additional needs and those that were deaf. Young people with additional need are more than likely to be falling victims of crime or be perpetrators of crime because they haven't had the support available to them. Cuckooing is something which is massive. County lines is a massive issue. And actually, if you're not going to put young people into meaningful employment and opportunities to actually keep up themselves occupied in their spare time, you are going to have issues of the hidden economy. The stabbing that happened in Mile End, I'm sure there was a trigger point. I'm sure there was also a point where young people involved could have actually asked for an adult for help. But the fact that that didn't happen has resulted in one family being destitute because their child is now being a victim of knife crime, but also the perpetrator, he's ruined his life as well.
Yeah, we
need to stop going to the point where the damage is already done. I'm someone who grew up, I was born in the early 90s. It was tough growing up. But like I said, my youth workers at the time were absolutely amazing. They gave up their time. They went above and beyond. They made sure that we had the opportunities, irrespective of race, background, socioeconomic status. We had a fair shake. And that's why I was able to do the things that I was able to do. And I'm really blessed to be in the position that I am in. And that's why I'm equally passionate about youth work.
So we're going to go straight into a break. After the break, we're going to discuss some practical solutions. We're going to ask Zak about practical solutions. We've had recent incidences in the Isle of Dogs, and also recently in Mile End Hamlets Way, which is a regular hotspot every summer. So join us after the break. We're going to go into the break. After the break, we're going to go straight into what can we do in Tower Hamlets to actually practically prevent these incidents, especially knife crime and casualties and deaths happening. So join us after the break.